Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for May 11, 2015. We'll begin with the special order calendar. Continued hearing items. Item number 1, 15004BZ, 129 Elizabeth Street, Manhattan.
Okay, with this one, they submitted revised plans, including a streetscape that, as we requested, and a revised statement of facts. They improved the description of what the loss of 26 square feet of the lot area does on the plans. I'm not sure it actually justifies the height increases, but the building character is in character with the neighborhood, I think. With respect to the added building height, I do have one question. Why does the floor-to-floor height above the garage have to be 10 feet? Why can't it be dropped to, say, 7.6 for a garage? And then you can drop just that, and then the mezzanine is actually only over the garage, so that would lower the height of the overall building. But I still think the height of the building is in character. Anybody else have a comment?
I don't really have a problem with the height of the building. However, they didn't really answer the questions and things I was getting at, which is why the loss of the 26 square feet per floor really makes the apartments unusable or unmarketable. So, you know, I did a little research and saw that the median studio size in New York City is like 550 square feet, and so the studio in this scenario is a little bit on the small side in comparison, and the median two-bedroom is about 850, and I think this is somewhere around that. It would be nice if they would just add a little discussion about that, how they want to be competitive by being somewhat within the acceptable range of studios and two-bedrooms. That would at least, to me, complete the picture and finish off the argument.
Okay, but they could probably talk about that at the hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I just had a question too about the floor-to-floor heights. I understanding that it fits into the character, the building fits into the character of the neighborhood, but I just question, I think they have 13-foot floor-to-floor heights, and I'm wondering if that's really appropriate.
Or let's say what drives it.
What drives
But
that?
it could be marketability also because the units are small, for example.
They should explain that.
Okay.
I would just be in favor of reducing the building height somewhat, because I know it was something that we really stressed the last time around, and something that the community board requested. So if they could shave a few feet off, that would be good.
So that mezzanine trick might help because these units are small and a higher ceiling kind of improves that marketability. Okay.
Appeals calendar, decision items. Item number 2, 13111A through 13311A and 15914A through 16114A. This is Arthur Kill on Pemberton Avenue.
Okay. So they revised the drawings to state, as we requested, private driveway and to clarify the dimensions of that turnaround area. And they added a note to the drawing with respect to the agreement to file the drainage plan prior to permit and to obtain approval prior to TCO. Which will be a condition to approval. So I think they did everything.
Item number 3, 24512A, 515 East 5th Street, Manhattan.
Okay, this one, we're going to defer decision, but the letter of 324 states that sprinklers were installed in 2006 and signed off, but they can't find the sprinkler drawings. And I'm like, really? There's an engineer, there's an architect, there's all kinds of people, there's a contractor. You can't find the sprinkler drawings? Architects are... Right. They said they looked at the DOB. All right, it's not at the DOB, which is hard to believe also, but you know, architects and engineers are required to keep their drawings for at least 10 years because that's the liability period. So I find it very difficult to believe there are no sprinkler drawings. They did provide a sign-off on the sprinkler installation for floors 1 through 6, but it doesn't include the cellar. The all-2 application states, oh, that's maybe my misreading, okay. It states that Gravity East Village is an ambulatory care facility, so permitted in the R7B. You know, I think it's a DOB call. The website shows that they do that kind of health-related stuff. That's really a DOB call, whether it is or it isn't.
I'm skeptical, but
Yeah, but you know, it's not like they're they're lifting weights, so I don't know what really they're doing. And then they also said that DOB will not lift the stop work order until 2 open violations are resolved. I didn't really know what those are. We have to defer decision on this, but we need to find out, like, what's going on, you know? So answer our questions. Yeah, exactly. Anybody else on this one?
Well, it would be nice to know if they've actually started any demolition.
No, they haven't gotten the lift of the, they haven't
that's
gotten
why,
a
because
partial
the two
lift.
are- oh.
Right. Yeah.
Item number 4, 9514A, 237 East 72nd Street, Manhattan.
Okay, this one, they revised the statement of facts to acknowledge discussions that we had in the April 21st hearing, which includes acknowledgement that this is an R10, not an R8. Statement of facts are a little bit strange because they say all this wrong stuff and then they correct it at the end, but, you know, this applicant is new, so, you know, little line. Yeah, so it's like a novel. You don't find out the butler did it till the end. So, also that the bulkhead ceiling will be 2 hours is included in that material, and they include fire stopping details, and a statement the mechanicals will be removed from the roof, and they added a statement about the practical difficulties that would be involved in a horizontal enlargement. Whether you understood it or not is a whole other question. And that the route of egress to the rear of the roof is increased to 3 feet, and there is a stair to the penthouse roof provided. There were some notes that needed to be added to the plans, so we're going to defer decision on this to add those notes. A lot of the notes, because it's in the statement of facts, but it's not actually on the drawings, which is what DOB looks at. So, and the applicant is on vacation, so we're going to defer this to next week.
Item number 5, 12814A, 47 East 3rd Street, Manhattan.
Did we have anything further to discuss
No,
on this?
nothing was submitted.
That's it.
Remember last week, yes.
All right, so
We'll have a draft later today.
we'll have a draft later. Okay, great.
Marjorie?
That was quick.
Go for it.
Yeah, no, don't go far.
Okay.
Continued hearing items. Item number 6, 16714A, 250 Manhattan Avenue, Manhattan.
Okay, with this one, they revised a statement of facts. They submitted an architect's letter clarifying that compliance with the 2008 building code would require demolition and reconstruction of the elevator core. Compliance with R6B zoning would require demolition of the rear portion at the first floor to allow for 34-foot rear yard. I'm curious whether that takes the floor area overage into account as well, because the building would be overbuilt if it had to comply with the R6B. Does removing the rear then fix that? I'm not sure, because it doesn't affect the residential floor area. When I compared to the statement of facts, the 2 issues listed in the architect's letter are not the only losses that would be suffered, so I'm not sure. That architect's letter is a little bit confusing because it only addresses 2 issues. There are many others, so the architect's letter is incomplete, and I'm not really sure what the purpose of it is. I know that it's good to have it from an architect, but then say everything that's going to be affected there. The bubble plans show other costs associated with code compliance, so that the bathrooms don't meet ADA requirements. I'm not sure whether that increases any cost, though, because the building hasn't been built, so just something to address that. And they clarified that the foundation slab to cellar has not yet been poured, but the foundation walls had been poured by the zoning text change. which means the foundation was 95% complete by then, according to the contractor's letter. I'm confused about the changes in the hard, soft, and committed cost numbers. Maybe Commissioner Otley Brown has a different take on that. They're different from the last submission without explanation. We also had asked them to respond to the question about the hard costs being mostly for site prep and site enclosure and not specific work that's specific to the project, because site prep you have to do for any site. And they did provide an appraisal to support the value of the commercial condo, although they only had one comparable, so I'm not really sure how you can rely on only one comparable.
Well, I looked at the appraisal, and I thought that for the purpose of this application, the appraisal was a good way to show what actually would be lost from the smaller bulk. And yes, they did only have one comparable, but the fact remains is that it actually showed that without the commercial unit and without, you know, the extra 200 or 400 square feet of residential and the lesser unit, you actually show a loss of approximately, I guess, like $500,000, $1.5 million. And so I was satisfied with that.
Okay. Anybody else?
I just had a question about the role of the yards text amendment in April 2008, if that impacted their plans at all? Because their permits were pulled in April of 2008. I wanted to know if they complied with the yards text amendment or if there was any impact.
Okay. Anything? Okay. Okay.
New cases, item number 7, 250 to 257 14A, Grosvenor and Woodridge Avenue, Bronx.
Okay, this is a common law vested rights case,
Oh, Jesus.
which has actually been before the board before, so the board has already looked at a lot of the findings, already found the findings that need to be found here, already found that that the permits were validly issued and that the foundations were complete as of February 2005, and the DOB confirmed all of that, and also the board already looked at whether the owner would suffer serious loss. I'd just like to know what's the reason for the delay in completing the project. I mean, most of these projects kind of should be done by now, the ones that sort of got stalled in 2008, so I'm confused about why this one seems to be lingering. There's also a statement in the statement of facts that if forced to comply with 2005 zoning, the per house costs would require house sale values that exceed the marketplace. I'd like to know what the support for that statement is, because the marketplace is, you know, increased dramatically in terms of value. So I'm not really sure where that comes from. I'm not sure they're right about that statement. There are comparative site plans that are intended to show the impact of the 2005 zoning on further development, but I'm not sure I'm understanding the labeling or what they're showing. I'd like the applicant to actually walk us through that. I don't really understand what the purpose of that information is.
I agree with you that the information that they gave us is quite confusing. In fact, they had a chart in the statement that had to do with what you would lose, and it talked about what was already built, how many homes were built, how many you could build if you built it with the new regulations. And in fact, I found it extremely confusing and hard to follow, so it'd be great if he can walk us through that chart as well, as so you could see what would be lost. And as to the delay of the project, I think a lot of it has to do with not just funding issues, but the market in Riverdale has not quite recovered, and I know that this developer has had a heck of a time trying to sell these homes. In fact, a lot of them have been on the market for a couple of years and are actually being rented because nobody will buy them. And it could be that they priced them just way too high for the market. So that's probably what's going on.
Right, I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, but they're selling for, I think they want like 9 or 11 million a piece. So they're asking a lot, and they're not selling. So
Also, they also had site issues. You know, we remember all the way back to the very beginning. They had a lot of subsurface issues with water and drainage, and so I would imagine that the remaining homes, they probably have some significant site work to do as well. So I think I understand what the delay is. I think it's market and probably some physical work. Yeah, the chart was a little confusing, but if they could just, it's almost as if you could just condense what we already know, because you don't really have to take us through the whole thing all over again and try to show it on a, just take us where we, finished off the last time, and then, show us what we need to know now.
Right, and it could be just talking us through it here,
Right,
because
yeah.
there's a chart already with the data, we just need help reading it.
I would just like some assurance that they're not going to be building a home every 2 years and they're going to come back for the next 16 years to complete the project.
Okay.
They are working, though, as we speak, because I did go to the site, and those sites were cleared, a couple of them, and
Okay.
I saw somebody actually working on landscaping.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
They've been working
they're
every
actually
day.
working, yeah.
They're there.
Okay.
Zoning calendar, decision items, item number 8, 24813BZ, 1179 East 28th Street, Brooklyn.
Okay, they provided plans with changes bubbled, so at least we could find out what the changes were, and they amended the zoning analysis. I mean, I think this is a kind of an awkward project, but in the end, I'm okay with it. Anybody else?
No, it's okay.
Item number 9, 26613BZ, 515 East 5th Street, we're going to defer.
We're going to defer on this, the never-ending story.
Item number 10, item number 10, 28414BZ, 267 Pacific Street, Brooklyn.
Okay, they provided sign-offs on the sprinkler installation. They amended the notes on the plans to show the sprinklers and the fire alarm system installed. The fire department signed off on all of that stuff, and we have DOI, so I think we're good on this one.
Continued hearing items, item number 11, 26413BZ, 257 West 17th Street, Manhattan.
Another of our ongoing, never-ending stories. I hope this one I really wish would end. They provided details of this elaborate layering and spring system for flush platforms to receive weight drops. I just wonder whether any tests have been done on these, and were the tests confirmed by the neighbor's expert, because obviously that's what needs to be done here. They provided a plan showing the proposed location of these platforms. It's actually so many of them, I kind of couldn't believe it. It's like I didn't count them all. I started to count and I just got tired. It seems like there are about 70 stations. And I just have a question about that. Could it be that for all those linear feet of platforms, that there's potentially a weightlifter standing on it, and they're all going to raise the weights up according to the instruction of the teacher, and then drop them at the same time? I think that could rumble the building to the ground. I'd like to understand why there's so many stations and how that is actually going to work. And they did provide a revised operation plan that seems to now include yoga. So there will be like a moment of silence during this process, but it's not clear to me what has changed that will reduce the nuisance, basically. Because we had talked about moving all the stuff down into the cellar, and now there seems to be this huge process to spend a ton of money to put these platforms on the first floor without any assurity that there will be change in the circumstances. I don't know why you would do that. And so that was my question. Why not look at moving the weight dropping to the cellar for real?
Right, they talked about how they have a new class, which is lower weights being dropped on the first floor, and it started talking about this is the trend of where their business is going, but they don't say anything about whether or not they're still going to have traditional CrossFit classes with the higher weight drops, and if that's going to be in the cellar. So they just need to tell us that so we can know if there's going to also be an impact
Because
from
they have
that.
two different systems, right? They have two different flooring systems, right? So my question was, one, the plan sort of makes it look like it's one big continuous floor. There are so many of these things. So, and we know that it's not. We know that these are sort of sections. And I had that question too of how many, people are actually going to be there. But they seem to have the sort of the lesser impact floor in the cellar. So if they're going to have heavier weights in the cellar, they have to actually probably go to the fancier system into the cellar. So that was a question of mine. And also, yeah, I guess they haven't gotten a third-party report back yet on this thing. And did I read it right that they're starting at 5:30 with weight drops? 5:30 a.m.
No way.
Can they start with
Yeah, they
quieter
said classes,
activity?
it opens at 5:15.
Right,
Yeah, so
5:15.
that means at 5:30 they're going to, get into gear. I think perhaps we need to take a look at their scheduling.
Yes.
Unless yoga is at 5:15.
Yeah, yoga is so good to calm your day, and then you throw weights around like at 11.
Well, their floor layout didn't agree with their change in operating plans. The first floor, as you mentioned, is full of these weight drop platforms. And in their operating plan, they say that the yoga will be in the elevated slab on the first floor.
Oh.
That there's going to be 2 studios on the first floor. One will just be on the elevated slab portion, which was what they had in there before.
Right.
And the second studio will have weight drops limited to below 115 pounds. But that's not what's shown on these plans. This shows the whole first floor is going to be this elevated platform,
These elevated.
the air monitored, air balancing weight drop platforms.
So where does the yoga go?
And then they say they're going to put the air regulated weight drop platforms in the cellar. But the cellar never had an elevated platform to cut these holes into. So I didn't understand how they were going to do that. Their operating plan didn't make sense with what they showed us for their flooring system. So I was actually a little confused about what they're doing.
Okay. Anyway, a long way to go, guys. Unfortunately.
Saga continues.
Yeah, okay.
Item number 12, 5114 BZ, 1369 East 28th Street, Brooklyn.
Okay, this one, which is a 73622, is difficult because we're talking about a prefab structure that's sitting on top of foundations. And the statement of facts, which is quite weak, seems to argue that a total demolition of the house and reconstruction on existing foundations is sufficient to qualify for the special permit as an existing building being enlarged. So if I go back, way back to those letters I always refer to from Joe Rose and David Karnowski, those were the specific questions that were asked in those letters. On 2 houses that were proposed to be demolished, could they qualify for 73-622? And the answer back then was no. So I don't see, and every time we look at these, we say, where's your existing first floor material? And there isn't any here. So I love the idea of a good-looking prefab and all that stuff, but I don't see how it fits within 73-622. The statement of facts, even more confusingly, cites to section 11-331 to support this position. That's the vesting provision for new buildings that may become subject to changes in code or zoning. What's relevant to 73-622 is the word enlargements, which is a defined term, which is an addition to the floor area of a building. And a building is defined as having 1 or more floors and a roof.
Right.
So I'm not even sure we get past my first sentence here of analysis, but if we did, or if they modified the project, then the statement of facts cites to 23-461A and 23-48 to support a combined side yard reduction to 8'10". But it did not discuss the comments that were made at the last hearing that the 3-foot side yard isn't justified because it's just a bay window that's reaching out to create 3 feet. The rest of the side yard is 4 feet. They did, though, provide deeds to show the house predates 61. They state the existing house is 34 feet high to the ridge, and they provide the elevations. I found the findings extremely weak, like hardly any energy placed into this application whatsoever, like don't work too hard, you might get tired. And they didn't go through any of the 7303 findings, so it's a very incomplete application. They made no changes to the drawings since the last submission, but I asked, where's the data of building heights on the streetscape study from? Because it's very specific, like they really know it's 34 feet. I mean, does that mean they went and they looked at the C's of O? Is it from some sort of a database? Is it eyeballing it? Was somebody out there with a laser? I mean, there's lots of ways of getting these numbers. And then with respect to the depth of the rear yard, they provided information about the depth of the yard to the rear on the diagonal property, the property to the diagonal, but no information about the size of the structures that sit within the rear yard. Are they 1-story or more? Here, I think, though, there's a better argument than most to be allowed to impose on the rear yard more, since it backs up to a very deep schoolyard. But I do know there would be an impact on one adjoining neighbor who doesn't have the benefit of backing up to the schoolyard. Neighbors to the other side have that big expanse, but this one neighbor kind of relies on a diagonal view to the schoolyard, which could get clipped by this one. So I actually like them to show what it's doing to that neighbor in terms of its access to a wide rear yard. And also the cover letter says there was an isometric provided. There wasn't. Anybody, any other comment?
I agree with everything you said, except the other thing that I don't find in the neighborhood character regarding this building is the reduced front yard. It's already a non-compliant front yard, and they're going to use like 6 out of 10 feet for a front porch, and I really don't feel it fits into the neighborhood character.
And I think also, weren't they supposed to give us some additional, like, planting?
Right, and he said he did, but I didn't find it. Yeah.
What is it?
Even if it does comply, I just don't think the front porch is in the neighborhood character.
Okay. So there's a huge threshold question here to
Yes.
begin with, and then all those other things to work.
Well, he said he was applying to the Department of Buildings on how to handle this, the prefab, so maybe he's made some progress.
Okay, but that still doesn't answer the question about whether, for the board's purposes, this is an enlargement, right? I mean, I don't even see, because that's the thing, it's clear we're independent in terms of that. We have to find that it meets the criteria of enlargement as far as board practice on this. So,
If it doesn't,
and so far, it seems like it doesn't. Yeah.
it's not retaining
It's
any
a new
walls at
building.
all. And I don't see how under the DOB, any interpretation I've seen in DOB, they'll be able to convince them it's an enlargement of an existing building.
Right.
On a prefab structure, it would be difficult to retain the structure on the first floor.
Because the other
as
is
walls,
back at the
because that
factory,
defeats-
not at the site. That's where the problem lies.
Right.
That's why it's not at the site.
So,
And it's too bad, because these prefab things can be really a great building typology, but it doesn't fit in with the confines of this special permit. Okay.
Item number 13, 12414 BZ, 11112 Gilmore Court, Brooklyn.
Okay, with this one, the drawings were revised to actually fill in the cellar and raise the floor joists for the floodplain regs. And I think we talked about this before, that we'll condition approval on the height of the building above grade being as shown on the drawings, and DOB will review the floodplain regs, and if there's a change in elevation, they'll just come back for a substantial compliance letter or something like that. Was there anything, Tony, was there something that you had sent more on this one? No, that's not Tony,
No, that's
okay,
not
it's
mine.
Henry. Okay.
Item number 14, 20414 BZ, 55 White Avenue, Brooklyn.
Okay, they requested an adjournment to the 6/24 hearing, June 24.
Item number 15, 324 14BZ, 19830 Jamaica Avenue, Queens.
And this one also, they requested a 2-week adjournment. Our calendars are really full in June, so I'm not sure we're going to be able to do these requests, but we'll take a look.
New cases, item number 1, 233 14BZ, 4545 Center Boulevard, Queens.
Okay, this one actually is going to be adjourned while the applicant checks into a few things.
Postponing it?
What?
Branding?
We're postponing it?
Branding?
Item number 2, 260 14BZ, 100 East End Avenue, Manhattan.
Okay, so this is the school. So I just go through my kind of long pile of comments. Sorry. So this is a request to enlarge the Chapin School. There's a statement in the statement of facts on page 4 that says that as a result of a 94 text amendment or a 1990 map change, the 1996 waiver for lot coverage in the corner lot was no longer required, and the degree of noncompliance for the 25-foot interior lot portion was reduced. I didn't understand any of that. So if that could please be explained. The statement of fact states on page 4 that modifications to the 6th floor to permit new offices and middle school classroom in the crossover building are in the existing building envelope, but P106 and P is proposed and existing 09 shows those rooms as new and encroaching on the required rear yard and lot coverage. So I think the statement of facts is really wrong because the drawings are probably right. I would like to see a dimension of the rear yard, which is not dimensioned after the 6th floor encroachment. It shows 17 feet on the existing drawing, and maybe that. The statement of fact states that there is a new STEM space on the 5th floor and suggests we go to P105, but it isn't on P105. I looked on other drawings, can't find it. It's not shown on the plan. I wonder whether it's within the existing envelope. The same question is true also for the 2nd and 3rd floor nurses and upper school classrooms. I can't find anything that I'm directed to on those P drawings. I think what's going on is we're being directed to the wrong set of drawings. So I'm trying to follow along like a novel, but I can't get there, and I keep turning pages, and is this the existing set or the proposed set, or what am I supposed to be looking at here? Need to make this easier for us to follow along because we're not following the story. I assume, in addition to which, there's lots of terminology that you see on one thing that's different on another thing, that's different in the statement of facts, it's different in the program needs analysis. So for example, there's a dining room in the cellar that's referred to in the statement of facts, but there's only a multi-purpose room shown there. Is that the dining room? I don't know, but we shouldn't have to guess. So all the terms need to be coordinated. That's most basic. Also, for instance, there's something on the 1st floor called the Gordon Room. Is that the dining room? What's the Gordon Room? I don't know what that. With respect to the size of the regulation size gym, there are at least 6 different numbers throughout the text, the documents, that don't agree with each other. The statement of facts says it needs to be 77 by 104. The programmatic needs report says it needs to be 60 by 94. And also for the largest existing gym, there are 2 different numbers given, 77 by 44 or 77 by 38. Also, the programmatic needs report shows 2 different sizes also within itself, so it's not even internally coordinated. It also shows 70 by 104 as opposed to 77. The letter from AAIS says you need a 50 by 84 size gym plus a 10-foot buffer. So when I do that pretty simple math, I get 60 by 94. But then in the same exact letter, it says they need 70 by 100 for, so when they add 10, they essentially get 20. So boy, am I confused. The proposed gym, on the other hand, isn't any of those things. It's 78 by 107. The whatever it stands for, the NFHS diagram, which I guess is an official thing, shows a 50 by 74 plus 10-foot buffer that works. So wow, what a mess. In addition, I noticed on one of the drawings that I'll get to a little bit later, where they're showing the outline of that gym on that floor, and they show it dashed to show on the as of right what would happen. The actual regulation size, whichever regulation size they actually picked, is set 10 foot back from the front. So that just tells me you could set it 10 foot back, so then you don't need to penetrate the sky exposure plane as much. So yike. So then there's also, in the programmatic needs analysis, there are these floating drawings from the School Construction Authority's guidelines. They just float there, but that's not actually how those guidelines work. There are pages and pages that talk about gyms, and they say you can have this kind of a gym for these kind of kids and this kind of gym, or if you don't have this kind of space, you can have this. We actually need the text so that we can read along, because it's not that, if you're really tight on space, you don't have to pick the biggest one. You can pick the one that works, right? As long as it meets within the, in this case, it's tournament regulations. So as long as it fits within tournament regulations, which the tournament group says can be 50 by 74 plus a 10-foot buffer. So, and then, so I'm wondering, what if the floor plate were brought in line with the actual recommendation of AAIS? My question is, would that pull the stair out of the R8B? I note that the 9th floor, for example, has a ton of circulation space. You wander all around. It's really badly laid out, frankly. And a very large mechanical. So it seems to me if that were tuned up, then you could also reduce that floor. So the 9th floor that has a lot of program seems to have so much circulation that's not being used or described as being used for student activities. You know, sometimes circulation space doubles as like activity space, but this just seems to be like the places you walk.
Well, it could be that they just, being that they're under the gym floor, they're just filling it in.
Right.
You know, and it's not necessary.
Right, and that mechanical space doesn't seem to be, is very large. So it's kind of unassigned mechanical. It may be bigger than what is needed. It may be too early in the design process to know exactly what the amount of mechanical is. Not sure if this info is in the, oh, okay. It would have been helpful to see the areas delineated on the proposed plans that are referred to in the repurposing. So, I mean, that was a lot of not being able to follow along in the story. They'd say, we'll move this to here, but then they didn't show us it here. And the other thing that I found that was very strange was there are these drawings that are small, and then they pull out an enlargement of like 2 rooms, and then they tell you the room is XYZ size, right? But I didn't really understand why. Like, make the drawing a little bigger and now point to it, and like it seemed to be a lot of storytelling given up by having those pulled out things. So my note, I found that basically the programmatic needs difficult to follow other than for the gym. For the upper school classrooms, for example, I understood there's an overutilization of the classrooms and a need for more, but then I wasn't clear why these can't be provided in existing spaces or where they were inserted into, or why they weren't inserted into the decommissioned gyms, like why that wouldn't be enough. It's not clear in the program report whether the plans show existing conditions. That was, I found it really confusing, or the proposed conditions. I'm like, is this what they're gonna do? Or is this what they have. For example, why are there 4 upper school classrooms on level 2 and 3 pulled out on page 26? That's what I was talking about. Yeah, I just didn't understand what I was looking for. I think the simplest thing would be for the architect to get up and walk us through this project, and then based on our kind of questions, make corrections to the programmatic needs analysis so that they actually tell the story that they're walking through. Neither the statement of findings or facts or the programmatic needs mention the circulation system, which is the principal cause of the need for the waivers in the R8B. Why do these need to be in the R8B? Why can't they be behind the gym, for example? There's that kind of funny recess in the corner on facing York Avenue. Why can't the whole circulation system be there? And since we know the gym can be a little smaller, then you could tuck it back there and move the gym into that 10-foot setback. Maybe there's a way to do that. They didn't explain.
That was really my big question, because when I look at the plan, you know, in my head, I can design it in such a way that I have my circulation in the R10, and without losing really any. And they don't really explain why that can't happen. I mean, show us a diagram, show us, you know, how it would be laid out, and then show us why it can't be laid out that way. So that was my first and foremost question when I looked at this. I was thinking, I think it can be done. So they're going to have to convince me.
Yes. So
that this plan is you know, what they really need. It just doesn't look like it.
So that should be done with the architect explaining to us what's going on. Then I noticed the statement of facts has an error about the scope of the front setback waivers in the R10A. I don't have the specifics here, but need to check that the statement of facts actually matches the rest of the material, because it doesn't in a lot of cases. Then if the rear yard noncompliance is being increased, why is that not also an increase in the degree of noncompliance of lot coverage? I always thought that lot coverage is viewed as a per floor noncompliance. You're not complying on the second floor, but on the third floor you comply because you pull back. So I don't understand why DOB didn't issue a objection on that. Also, I'm wondering why there's no requirement for a side yard waiver, since it is the new work is increasing the degree of noncompliance by being less than 8 feet and obstructed by a stair. So again, I didn't really understand that. The statement of facts gives a slight nod to the reasons why the as-of-right alternatives are not feasible, and refers to certain pages in the programmatic needs analysis and never to the as-of-right drawings. But none of these things are explained. The programmatic needs, page 12, I think, is unclear about the structural issues and makes no mention of a utility trench. There's a drawing that has the word utility trench in it, and so that's nice. The PNR 15 doesn't describe the issue at all. In fact, it shows there could be a setback from 84th Street. PNR 16 shows other reasons than those listed in the statement of facts for the infeasibility, and it would have been helpful to understand also in plan. PNR 13 is a good drawing. It's a really nice drawing. It's like axonometrics and really pretty about mechanicals, but it not sure what it's supposed to be telling us about our issues. PNR 14 has the floor designations mixed up, but shows utility tunnel, again, without telling us what it is. Understanding a little about the stairs. Yeah, so I'm still, with respect to the stairs, I'm trying to understand why the stairs present such a problem and they can't be relocated. Kind of in sum for me, the statement of facts is very lazily composed, not focused on the argument. It needs to reinforce the programmatic needs report, and the two have to work in tandem to tell us what's going on. And then if if obsolete buildings is what is the A finding, which after all, we could use an A finding, then the statement of findings should have discussed how these buildings are obsolete for that intended purpose. That's also true for neighborhood character. They should have, the statement of findings should have incorporated the bulk analysis into it. With respect to that analysis, that's the character finding analysis, they need to show on the map the portion of the taller buildings that continue into the R8B district and their heights. All they showed was a photograph of a building, and they said, here's the building, it reaches into the R8B. Well, the building is all kinds of things, and so we don't know which part's in the R8B, how tall it is, what. The whole idea is that there's 25 feet in the R8B that's tall. So where else in this study area do we have similar conditions? There's also lots of other materials supplied with the submission, but no mention of them in the statement of facts. Don't know what they're for. For example, the view study, what's that? Views from across the street for the neighbors? Don't know what that is, and why they're showing it to us. With respect to the EAS, just to jump to the EAS, there's a DEP letter from April 15th that states that a phase 2 was done without first obtaining approval on the work plan, but that they will require a wrap and a CHASP. So you need to get onto that right away. And that's all I had to say. Anyway, what are you like? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that you said a lot, and it's all actually really important for us to get answers to that, and I didn't have anything else to add.
I agree. I think, at least the first impression that I got in reading through this the first time was that it's almost like this is an outline, and that they did not get to kind of the meat of everything. They don't really explain fully all of their issues. You know, why do they need particular spaces? What is the real problem here? Is it the amount of children? Is it, what actually is it? So it's almost as if I'm looking at kind of all the points they wish that they could touch on, but have not really explained it. So I think what has happened is that maybe they've got a couple of people working on this, or 2 or 3 or 4, and everybody's kind of submitted some piece. But there isn't really anybody who's taken a look at this and in total, and then gone through all the pieces, tied it all together, made sure that everybody's talking about the same thing at the same time. Because everybody seems to use different words for the same sort of spaces. So I think that would go a long way in bringing this together. I agree that it just was very disjointed and really needs someone to, you know, kind of oversee this. Like I said, I had serious doubts about the egress issue. I think that they really have to show us that they can't provide this in the R10. I did not understand the analysis of the heights analysis. There really was, there were nice pictures and showing us where the study area was, but there's, you know, sort of a big glaring error or an issue that they didn't really tackle, which is, you know, on 84th Street, there really isn't a, you know, building that's necessarily over 75 feet that's within spitting distance of this building. So they talk about all of these other buildings that, you know, are in the study area, but when you focus in particularly on that block, they've got to tackle that. They've got to tell us, you know, how this is going to, you know, to impinge on this neighborhood. So it was, I think they think they know where they're going, but I think they just need a lot more work on it.
Okay. Well, in terms of accepting that they're over, you know, at capacity, you know, I was trying to look at the series of charts on page 25 of the programmatic needs report, and it's just completely illegible. And even when you blow it up, you can't read the numbers. And they use these descriptors such as, I don't know, P day, H day, I day,
Right.
which I had absolutely no idea what they were. So I have no idea how their existing classrooms are being used. And in addition to the Gordon room, I didn't understand the purpose of the Berenson room, of the Black Box Theater, is that used as a classroom, the Fairfax room, and then I was sort of surprised that the greenhouse that used to be on the roof is now going to be a greenhouse enclosed. So should that really still be a greenhouse? I also questioned this very large egress incursion into the RAB. I sort of felt that the gym could be rotated 90 degrees and it would fit more into the R10. And let's see.
That's interesting.
Regarding the noise analysis, they stated that I guess the maximum noise coming from the play area would be around 74 dBs, but at the nearest residential receptor would be 64 dBs at a distance of 30 feet. Now, and then they said that was not significant. However, the article that they include says that any difference of 5 decibels over the ambient is a significant noise increase, and it's noticeable. So I think they should do an analysis of showing us the distance to the nearest residential receptors from the edges of the playground, because I didn't know where this residential receptor was, and if they can show us what the ambient noises are at those locations and what the increase will be. So I wasn't completely satisfied with their noise analysis. They should show us what the incremental change will be. And I guess that's about it.
Great, thank you. Okay. Thank you.
This concludes the May 11th public review session for the BSA. Turn the mics down.